The world does not run on compassion, fairness, or hollow promises of an eternally stable economy. It runs on the brutal breathing rhythm of a monster called the cycle. When the crowd is drunk on the banquets of artificial growth, when cheap money floods every corner of life like a sweet poison, that is when the scythe of darkness begins to be sharpened in terrifying silence. There is a ruthless truth the mass media has always deliberately tried to conceal. Money never disappears in a crisis. It merely carries out a great migration. It flows from the pockets of the panicked into the pockets of the patient, from the hands of those who treat assets as lifeless numbers into the hands of those who understand that assets are absolute power to control the world. A crisis has never been the period at the end of development. It is a powerful comma separating an old class of the wealthy, clinging to outdated glory, from a new class of the wealthy, quietly rising from the ashes. History does not record the fearful. It only engraves the names of those who saw the golden opportunity while blood was spilling across trading floors. And today's podcast episode may be a strategic map to help you escape the fate of a lamb and step into the ranks of the shepherds. Welcome to Inner Shadow, where you will hear truths society does not want you to know. The machine that shears the sheep, the elite's brutal script. To become a winner, you must understand the rules of the financial gods. The global financial system is a machine designed to perfection to carry out a periodic sheep shearing process, a ruthless loop but meticulously calculated. The liquidity injection phase, the predator's seduction. Every cycle begins with a honeyed phase. Central banks cut interest rates to extremely low levels. Money is printed recklessly and pumped into the system under the banner of stimulating the economy. This is when the flock, meaning the vast majority of workers and small retail investors, is fattened up. When money becomes too easy, reason is blurred by greed. People borrow to amplify profits, to buy homes, buy cars, and pour into risky speculative assets. Euphoria blankets everything. Everyone thinks they are an investing genius, but in truth, they are simply being fattened for a coming purge. The tightening phase, the scythe emerges from the shadows. When debt in society hits the ceiling, when greed has pushed asset prices to absurd levels, the machine reverses. Central banks suddenly raise interest rates to control inflation. Cheap money vanishes, replaced by expensive borrowing costs. Those standing at the peak of debt leverage begin to suffocate. This is when the shepherd starts pulling in the net, turning dreams of quick wealth into a nightmare of default. The asset squeeze and takeover phase, the migration of power. When a crisis erupts, panic spreads like a virus. Asset values from real estate to stocks plunge without breaks. Under the pressure of debt and overwhelming fear, the crowd is forced to dump their most valuable assets at rock-bottom prices just to salvage a few scraps of cash. This is precisely when plutocratic capital and the new wealthy step in with enormous cash piles accumulated in silence. They do not merely buy assets, they buy the future itself, the control of supply chains, and the economic lifeblood at discounts so ridiculous they are almost comical. A new order is established, and those who do not understand the rules of the game will spend their entire lives working to repay the debts to those who created the game. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The great crises of the past were not random accidents. They were calculated tsunamis engineered to restructure global power. The Great Depression of 1929, the collapse of an era. The 1920s were an age of excessive frenzy in America. Stocks were seen as a shortcut to paradise, but on Black Tuesday, the bubble exploded, dragging down thousands of banks. The truth behind it: while millions of Americans stood in lines waiting for bread tycoon dynasties like Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan used the period to consolidate their empires. They swallowed up oil companies, railroads, and small banks, gasping for air. The Great Depression destroyed the emerging middle class, yet created a terrifying concentration of financial power in the hands of a small elite. They understood when blood is running in the streets, that is when you build a throne. The Asian financial crisis of 1997, cross-border sheep shearing. The storm began with Thailand's baht and quickly wiped out the economic achievements of Southeast Asia's tiger economies. Currencies collapsed, foreign reserves dried up, and nations fell into crushing debt. And the truth behind it, this was a textbook example of using financial instruments and pressure from international organizations like the IMF to force restructuring. Western multinationals and financial oligarchs jumped in under the name of rescue, but in reality, they were taking over domestic banks, strategic supply chains, and resource extraction rights. A new generation of wealthy people in Asia rose by standing on the same side as big capital, rather than trying to resist the tidal wave. The US financial crisis of 2008, the greatest debt transfer in history. The subprime debt nightmare not only toppled Lehman Brothers, it pushed the entire global financial system to the brink of annihilation. People lost homes, lost jobs. But look carefully who truly benefited, and the truth behind it: too big to fail banks were bailed out with the very tax money of the victims. After 2008, massive investment giants like BlackRock and Vanguard rose with unprecedented power. They bought millions of foreclosed properties and turned an entire generation of homeowners into lifelong renters on their own land. This was the moment capital perfected control, through debt turning workers into slave gears, inside a machine where the elite hold every legal choke point. So how do you know when the scythe has stopped swinging and dawn is coming? This is survival knowledge, if you want to stand among the new kings. Watch for the system's signals: the yield curve inversion, then normalization. An inverted yield curve is an omen of death for the economy. But when it begins to flatten or return to normal after a long inversion, that is also when the system has already drawn enough blood. It signals tightening has peaked, and a new liquidity cycle is quietly being prepared. The central bank pivot. When central banks stop raising rates and begin signaling quantitative easing or liquidity support, that is the starting gun for the next race. The crowd is often still drowning in pessimism because of unemployment headlines, but smart money has already begun quietly accumulating assets. The fear index, VIX, and maximum despair. When headlines overflow with pessimism, when the last investors finally capitulate because they can't bear the pressure. This is the market bottom. The new wealthy act when fear peaks when the crowd has fully given up. As Warren Buffett said, "Be greedy when others are fearful." Policy and law-driven consolidation. Pay attention when governments pass new laws under the name of economic stabilization, but in reality, they pave the way for mergers and acquisitions. When the legal system begins clearing the path for centralized financial power, it is a sign the takeover game is entering its final stage to establish a new order. The mindset of the new wealthy. In the eye of the storm, the difference between those who get crushed and those who win rests on 7 pillars of steel. Focus on positioning, not mere survival. Don't just try not to sink. Watch which islands appear first when the tide goes out. The new wealthy do not try to run from crisis. They try to stand in the right place when dawn returns. Being correctly positioned for a new cycle matters more than sprinting inside an old one. Crisis is a filter of truth. In euphoric times, even trash can shine. But when crisis comes, only real value remains. The new wealthy don't need to be geniuses who create something new. They only need patience to wait for fake models to collapse, then pick up the real value diamonds discarded in the mud because of the crowd's fear. The art of restraint and iron discipline. The biggest mistake of losers is trying to go big to recover losses while the market is falling. In contrast, new kings are the most cautious. They never spend all their ammunition in one shot. They stay in the game as long as possible because they understand the last survivor gets to set the price. A split-second clarity between 2 lines of fire. You must be calm enough not to be swept into the crowd's panic vortex, yet disciplined enough not to be burned by impatience. Composure under volatility is the most precious asset. Be an objective observer, not an emotional gambler. Use the slowdown to upgrade intelligence. When the world slows down, you have the chance to upgrade yourself without being distracted by competitive noise. Use this time to deeply understand the rules of the game, behavioral psychology, and how debt mechanisms operate. When the market recovers, your knowledge becomes a competitive edge no money can buy. The position test for the 30-40 age group. This is the stage where you cannot afford mistakes. Pressure from family and society can drive hasty decisions. Remember, one correct decision in a crisis can save you 20 years of grinding work. Don't let short-term pressure blind long-term vision. Lie low and wait intelligently. History remembers the one who lasts to the end. Every great empire is built from the ashes of its predecessor. After each crisis, the world order is reset. Do you want to write the new rules or be forced to obey them? Your quiet preparation today is the answer to your position tomorrow. The oligarch's consolidation. We are living in an era where control is no longer enforced by violence, but by debt and complex legal barriers. The elite use crisis to perform a massive social surgery with two core objectives. First, absolute control over physical assets. Through debt squeezes and financial foreclosure, megacorporations take over real estate, farmland, and energy resources. The ultimate goal is to turn privately owned assets into a rental ecosystem. They want the vast majority of workers to become renters of their own lives, from housing to transportation to basic necessities. And when you own nothing, you become easier to control than ever. Second, tightening supply chains and controlling labor. Crisis is the perfect excuse for large-scale layoffs, automation adoption, and tighter legal regulations. This creates immense pressure on workers, forcing them to work more for lower real wages. At the same time, oligarchs use financial measures to control everything from raw materials to distribution networks, leaving small businesses with no room to survive, forcing them to merge or disappear. This is a war to establish an order where big fish devour small fish, riding the current. The art of survival. The answer is never try to fight the system with useless outrage. You can't stop the tide, but you can learn to surf the violent waves. Understand the cycle and turn the system's power into your own launchpad. Liquidity is the lifeblood. Always keep part of your assets in cash or cash equivalents with high liquidity, ready for once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. Don't become rich on paper, with no cash to act. Manage debt like managing your lifeline. Eliminate consumer debt immediately. In a crisis, debt is a chain that prevents you from moving when opportunity appears. Clean up your balance sheet before the storm makes landfall. Diversify positioning into real assets. When the value of financial paper can evaporate, look to things with real utility, income producing real estate stocks of companies controlling essential infrastructure, or commodities with durable value. Understand the rules deeply. Study macroeconomics, monetary policy, and financial law yourself. Don't listen to what the elites say on the media. Watch what they do with interest rates and liquidity. Knowledge is your shield. Superior adaptability. The new world doesn't need people who do only one thing well. It needs those who can relearn everything in the shortest time. Become versatile and flexible. The power of silence. Train yourself to make decisions based on data and logic, not on impulsive emotions or sensational headlines. Calmness in a crisis is an asset more valuable than gold. This great purge is not for the weak or for dreamers who fantasize about an easy life. It is for those with the courage to stare into the abyss and see gold in the darkness. A crisis is a reminder that this world always has inevitable selection. You cannot change the breathing rhythm of the cosmic cycle, but you can absolutely change your position within it. The new wealthy of the next decade are being formed right now through quiet preparation, iron discipline, unshakable belief, and self-mastery. Stop complaining about the system's injustice. Start studying the rules of the game so you can use the system itself to elevate your life and your position. While the crowd out there is panicking, fleeing, and losing everything, be the one who stands firm, watching with the eyes of a predator, preparing for the greatest leap of your life. Dawn will return soon. But remember, when the sun rises, it will shine brightest only on those who were already standing on the mountaintop beforehand. Where will you be when that day comes, among the crowd at the foot of the mountain crying, or on the summit of power and freedom? The crisis doesn't come to kill you. It comes to select. Rise and become the chosen.